I'm Thomas, and you're listening to the Gracing Podcast, where today you will listen to a conversation that is ultra coded, if you will. And my guest is a young man who you probably have heard about before. He is Chris Mehlman. Is that a good pronunciation? That is how
That
Germans
is a
would
good
say.
pronunciation. Yep, that's a good pronunciation.
So let's start there, because I figured this name must have some kind of German origin almost. Does it? And do you know what it means?
Yes. So I believe it means miller. I think I feel like like a miller in what we call a miller, I guess, in the U.S. And so on my dad's side, some of his family comes from Germany. So that's where it's kind of the story behind it, and that's why my Instagram handle is what it is. So the mailman, if I really pronounce it strongly, be the mailman delivers, which is like the mailman in the U.S. is
obviously
who delivers the mail. So that's kind of the story behind my Instagram handle as well.
Yeah, I like this play on words there. But what is probably fascinating, at least to me, is like, it's correct that it would mean something akin to a miller, but that usually in Germany you would call this Müller, which is a very common surname. And I've never actually met somebody in Germany who is called Mehlmann, which, like, the literal translation would be the flour man.
Yeah, so maybe my family was a flower delivery man or something. It is really interesting because there's also no one. Muller that's a name in the U.S. too. There's a lot of there's people with German backgrounds in the U.S. who have that name. I've never met somebody with my last name, never ever. So, it is interesting. I don't know the whole story behind it with my family's history, but it's definitely something I should probably research.
If I'd bring on my grandfather to the conversation, he would probably have an educated guess. He got into like looking into like the whole, how do you call this, like the tree,
the family tree.
Family tree.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But we're not here to talk about this. We are here to talk about gravel racing, ultra racing, and also for the listeners who listen to most episodes, probably heard that we already addressed Badlands, but in a German-only episodes where I was joined by the two winners, who both happen to be German, namely Svenja Beetz and then Rick Steffen. That was a German episode. So let's start there, probably, because it was potentially one of the highlights of your season this year. Chris, you rode Badlands and you finished in third spot. How was the entire experience, especially with all the travel that was involved to get there from the States? Because for people who don't know you yet, you obviously are from the United States.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. I never been to Granada before. I had been to Malaga. So just Malaga is on the coast, just southwest of Granada. But it was just a really cool experience going over there, and it's always cool to explore a new area when I'm going to a race. And then the race itself was definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done. Southern Spain, for anyone who watches the Vuelta a España in southern Spain in August, is very hot. And I got to experience that firsthand. It was an incredibly challenging experience. I mean, it's hard to describe the feeling of being 400 kilometers into a race and thinking, "Oh, I'm halfway there," and knowing you still have 400 kilometers left. It's hard to wrap your mind around that. But yeah, just an incredible experience, and I think like a affirmation that you can do really challenging things if you set your mind to it. And that was kind of what I came out of it with. Definitely beat my body up a lot, but just a great way to see Andalusia in Spain.
So people who listen to this and also happen to subscribe to my newsletter, The Gravel Stack, they will have probably read the premiere edition of what I ended up calling Gravel Motives, where the two of us, we had a chat, and that was just at the time when you were in the final steps of your preparation for Badlands. And I remember that one thing that you told me there, which by the way was an interview that we had like texting on Instagram, because that is how I do this, but you told me that you are pretty meticulous in your preparation. And especially Badlands, like for those listeners who probably are not aware, it goes through what is called the Gorafe Desert. So starting from Granada, you go down to this desert territory where, it's a proper desert. I've never been there. You've just ridden there for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, but it's like pretty hot during the day, cold at night. There are no gas stations anywhere because you're in a desert. So did your prep pay off in the end?
100%. So I think I read somewhere that Rick Steffen, he also is pretty meticulous, and he did the same thing I did, which is go through the whole course and mark. I use Ride with GPS. I'm not sure what app he uses, but mark all the places you can get food, you can get water, like bars, convenience stores, grocery stores, um, fountains. My Hammerhead shows fountains and stores natively on it, but I just wanted to mark them just to like know, okay, here are the good ones I should go to.
Yeah.
And I went through, kilometer by kilometer and just mapped all that out. And then same thing, like looking at what other setups people used in the past, looking at talking to people like Rob Britton who have done it before, talking to Danny Shrewsbury and Brad Shenton, who they won the pairs race last year. So just kind of figuring out, what the best setup is for a race like this. And yeah, I'd definitely say that sort of preparation pays off. I also did a lot of heat training in a sauna prior to it, just because I live in Colorado. I'm in Massachusetts right now visiting family, but I'm normally in Colorado. And while it gets relatively hot during the day, it's nothing like southern Spain. And so for me, it was just trying to prepare as best as possible for those hot situations. So yeah, the preparation definitely paid off for sure.
And I can confirm, because that is also what Rick told me. He was super well prepared. And actually, he was doing his second attempt this year, after last year crashing out also in first spot, but after 8 hours or so, he crashed out. And he had told me the story even that before last year, he went there with a friend to Spain and did like reconning of large sections of the course.
Oh, wow.
Which obviously is easier for a German than for an American to recon.
Yeah.
He did even go that far, and had also like, especially all the fountains noted down, which I think. How long was the longest stretch without any water refill possibility this year? More than 100 Ks as well, right?
Yeah, I forget water exactly. The food was definitely, that was the first night, was we went over the Alto de Verifique, which is, they actually use that in the Volta sometimes, past this observatory, and that whole section was during the night. And yeah, I mean, I got down to half a bag of Haribo candy and was pretty much out, and I was having to ration it. That's just because, in Spain, things, even on the weekdays, tend to open pretty late. So it'll be 9 or 10 in the morning. And I was really down to my last little stores of food. Water, I did run pretty low that first night. But yeah, I think it was maybe it was that period over the, wasn't through the desert. It was, I think, over the Alto de Verifique. But there was also a fair bit of downhill in there. So yeah, the water felt a little easier just because there's so many fountains in Spain. It was more as long as you had enough carrying capacity. So I brought 4.5 liters. So I had carrying capacity of 4.5 liters of water, which I needed all of it. It was very much worth it having that capacity. But with the food, that was the big challenge with everything being closed at night.
How did you store the water? Did you have it like traditionally in like a backpack, or did you have like one?
Yeah, so I saw Rick's set up. I've done that before. I've done it in a frame bag before, but I just had 2 bottles, 2 750 milliliter bottles. So 1.5 liters there. And I had 3 liters on my back. 3 liters is a lot on your back, but it was worth it 100%. I mean, I'd say in the first day, especially, it was really, really, really hot. It was, I was probably drinking 1 liter and 1.5 liters, or a liter and a liter and a half per hour. Sometimes that was how hot it was. So I really needed all of that water, and I did see some racers carrying almost nothing, like probably what I'd carry for a 100-mile race. And I was blown away how they're able to do that, because I think if you run out of water, not only is it going to hurt your riding performance, it can get really dangerous. You could you could definitely die out there if you run out of water and you're
without water.
stuck somewhere. So I'd always rather have extra.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's go a bit more back. A topic that we also tackled in the newsletter conversation that we did is how you ended up getting into ultra racing, coming from a more traditional racing background. So that story you already told me, and people can jump there and read it. But so you have been quite successful before at the distances of like an Unbound XL, which what is that in kilometers?
That would be about 550, 560 kilometers.
So a bit shorter than Badlands, and from what I hear, having done neither myself, less technical and less challenging terrain than what you find in at Badlands, or not?
Yeah, I'd say it's very rough. So Unbound is known for really rough terrain. There's a lot of we call them B roads or unmaintained roads, and they're
MMR
can be really muddy. So the mud is a big challenge in Unbound, and the rocks are incredibly sharp. So they're each challenging their own ways. Obviously, the climbing is nothing like Badlands. It's just up and down. It's constantly rolling. Versus Badlands is these huge mountain climbs. I would say that's almost more challenging because with Badlands you get breaks. Well, not breaks because descending is still physical. By the end, you're really tired. But with Unbound, you're just always on the pedals, and that's really hard. But yeah, I mean, it's a very different sort of just different sort of terrain. So and then track 560 is a similar distance to Unbound. I did that this year. This was the first year they were able to hold it. Last year they were supposed to hold it, but it got canceled due to weather. And that one's different as well. I'd say that's my favorite course just because it goes up into the Pyrenees and then it goes down to the coast. So you see like a wide array of what the Catalonian landscape is like. So that was really cool, but it took about the same amount of time as Unbound, maybe a little longer. So.
And Badlands, was it the longest competitive gravel thing you did? Because officially it's not a race, but everybody races it effectively.
Yeah. So Badlands was the longest I've done. Yeah, so I have not done any competitive bike packing events yet. That is definitely on the horizon, but Badlands was the longest one I've done, and I think it's challenging because it's kind of on the edge. It's too short to be a bike packing event, but it's still quite long. Like the question before heading into it was like, will I sleep or will I not sleep? And I ended up realizing that you can't sleep, and I didn't feel like I needed any sleep. But racing for approximately 40 hours for me, it was 41 and a half hours total, including stops. I mean, it's a long time to go without sleep, so you had to factor that in as well.
And going into it, what was like your expectation? What was your goal? Because when we chatted, it was like it didn't come across like you go there for the win. I think you maybe even put it like you go there for the experience and for finishing it because it will be hard. But I assume that you did it a matter of factly have some at least goal time, maybe not a result, but something in mind that you're not competitive going into it.
Yeah, I am very competitive. I will say I genuinely, the main thing was just finishing it because I know a lot of very experienced people who've scratched multiple times or scratched this year. I mean, the person who won last year in the women's race, she scratched this year. Jesse Yates, who's super experienced, he scratched this year. So I think for me, the big thing was completing it because it is, no matter who you are, it's a huge challenge just to finish something like that. I think for me, I did want to finish under 50 hours. That was definitely a goal, and I thought that was realistic. I think this year's course turned out to be quite fast based on the times, but that was kind of the goal was finish, under 50 hours. And of course, deep down, I was like, I really would love to be up there in the race, but you just never know how things can pan out. So number one thing was just getting across the finish line. So.
And what were in the days that you spent there, like the most interesting moments for you? Like you probably encountered on the track, times when you checked the tracker because you said like, "Ooh, I do have a chance," or just I don't know, you had a great view at some point that was memorable.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say riding through the Gorafe Desert was that was memorable. Maybe not in the best way. It was just brutal. It's so hot, and the terrain as well is just so unforgiving. There's no trees. It's just riding through these dry riverbeds, which are
They
slightly
call it
uphill or kind of
ramblas.
soft. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not to be confused with ramblas in Barcelona, which are cool and fun streets in the towns. But these ramblas are just like we talked about it here a few times. But must be very special the way Paul Voss, who is co-hosting with me here, sometimes put it to me. He's it's not like sand. It's sandy definitely in some sense because these are dried out riverbeds, but it's not like the sand from cyclocross racing or from a beach or so. It's must be very unique.
It is very unique. It's beautiful scenery. It's actually interesting because they shoot a lot of American Western films in that area because the scenery is right. So they actually have two completely built mock Western American towns, like the stuff you'd see in a cowboy movie, built in southern Spain in this desert. And they shoot a lot of films there. They've shot a few of the Indiana Jones films there and a bunch of other pretty major ones. So yeah, it was really spectacular. So that was definitely a memorable moment or period of time. And then the other one, I mean, for me, I think my highlight riding wise had to be the Velafique descent. It was this, must have been a 15-kilometer paved descent. And it was just S turns, switchbacks all the way down. And I rode it at night. So I could take the whole road because you could see any cars coming from really far away. And there ended up being no cars anyway. But it was probably about 2 a.m. And it felt the closest I'll ever be to being like a professional road cyclist because I had the whole road to myself, could hit every corner perfectly. That was amazing. It was just like a nice break. And then, yeah, I mean, I think, there were some funny experiences as well. Like I came into this village at about 3 a.m., 3 or 4 a.m. That morning. So Monday morning. And this is when I was feeling like, oh, I'm going to run out of food before I can get to a store. And there was a group of probably 10 or 15 kids. I mean, I'd say they're probably about 17, 18 years old, drinking beer, smoking. And I was like looking at them like, what are you guys doing? Like, am I seeing something? It's like 3 or 4 a.m. Like, how are you guys not asleep? And they looked at me like, what are you doing awake? Like, why are you on a bike at 3 or 4 a.m.? And then I was asking them if there was any food in this town. And they're like, oh, we don't have any food. And then they started arguing with each other. And I was like, what's going on? And then one of them was like, come with me. They didn't really speak English, but he's like, come with me, come with me. And he said, vending machine, sandwiches. And I'm like, wait, there's a vending machine with sandwiches in this little village? Like, there are barely any vending machines in anywhere in, unless you're in a city in Spain.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit skeptical, and the way he was taking me was off the course. So I was like, well, this is going to be a waste of time because I'm going to lose some time. So I followed him for about half a mile, and then I realized I can't do this. I have to turn around. So I ended up turning around and going back. But that was a funny experience. Obviously, seeing the
Do you
wildlife
think
in
they wanted to rob you and get your bike? Did
You
that
know,
occur to you?
I was like, I don't think they'll be able to pick this bike up. It's heavy enough. And also the seat post is so tall. None of them were tall enough to fit in my bike. But it was funny. They did seem very friendly. But yeah, it was just an odd experience. And I was thinking like, can't believe I'm seeing these people at like, I know that Spanish culture tends to stay up pretty late. But this was a tiny village and it was well past when normal people would be awake. Everything was closed. It was like almost morning time really, but it was too early for people to be up and especially drinking beer. So yeah, that was pretty funny. And then yeah, I mean, riding along the coast was really pretty. The first part, the second part, not so much because we were in Almeria, which is a big city. And then the other one of the memorable things is I ran out of electrolyte supplements and I had to buy a salt shaker. And I bought like a full size, salt shaker you get for your house that probably would last, 6 months or something like that. And I was just eating out of it to get the salt I needed. So I was literally just taking the salt shaker, opening it up while I was riding, and it was disgusting. But it did the trick. It wasn't exactly the nicest thing, but
why didn't you put it in your bottles?
See, that was just a time efficiency thing. Just when you're prepping your bottles, it takes that much longer. And also, I was more concerned that I'd put too much salt in my bottles, and then the water would be useless because it would just taste all like salt water. So I figured I'll just eat it, and it will taste gross for 5 seconds. But then when I'm drinking, it's just nice normal water. That was kind of the rationale behind it. I did try putting in my hydration pack at one point, but it felt like it just settled to the bottom of the pack, and for the rest of the time, my water tasted slightly salty, which isn't the nicest thing. So yeah, I figured I'd take the 10 seconds of really gross feeling eating salt versus drinking salt water constantly.
At what point are you pretty firmly in the third spot?
Yeah, so I was in fourth. So I never looked at the tracker during the race.
Never.
So for me, that just would cause more stress because what happens is like, even if somebody's 30 minutes behind you, you're like, oh my God, they're only 30 minutes behind me. Like, they're so close. And I mean, I didn't see anyone for most of the race. So after the first day, of course, starting that night, once we probably got past 10 p.m., saw no one. It was just look behind me, no one.
At this point, are you aware who is ahead of you or not?
Nope. I never even saw Rick once, except for the start. I didn't even know. Yeah, I didn't know who was ahead of me. I do, except for I guess.
Or not?
So I figured I was in probably top 5, top 10.
Okay.
And then I did know one person who was ahead of me because they had been working together for part of the race. So they caught me first evening and just flew by me on this climb. There's 2 of them, 2 Italian guys. And I was like, oh, like, are you a pair? Because they looked like they were riding in a pair. And they're like, no, we're solo. And I was like, what? Well, you guys are riding together. And essentially the next descent, I caught them because they were descending pretty slowly. And then the climb after that, they passed me. And for the next hour or so, they stayed about 200 meters ahead of me. And eventually one of them...
each other all the time, or?
Yep. I was not super happy about it, but luckily ended up beating both of them in the end. But one of them got dropped eventually, and the other guy went off ahead. And I thought I'd never see this other guy because they were so strong. And then with about 90 miles to go, so probably 140K or so, under something like that, 150K, I came off this huge descent and rolled into this village, and sure enough, the guy was there. I was like, what the heck? And I had stopped 2 times in that descent because I was so tired I had to take a break, just like for 30 seconds, just to like rest my body and grab some food. And he was there, and so I was like, oh my gosh. And he was just leaving as I was getting in. So I was probably there for about 6 minutes just buying water and stuff because sometimes the bars can take a little while. And I caught him within the next 30 minutes once I started riding. So that was when I knew he was done because he was just going so slowly. So I caught him on the last really big climb, I guess you could say. And I passed him, and I never saw him again. And that was kind of, I knew I was in third by that point because when I was in that town, there was a race media person there. And he said, oh, you're in fourth now. So I knew when I caught the guy ahead of me, I'm like, okay, now I'm in third. Of course, like I didn't celebrate third until I crossed the finish line. I got to the finish, like, yeah, you finished third, just to confirm. But yeah, it was a good feeling for sure.
It's interesting that you say you're never actually taking a look at the tracker, because I talked to a few people and then they, as you say, it creates some kind of stress or also awareness. I mean, you can look at it from 2 sides, I assume, but
Yep.
definitely like, but then in the end, Rick, for instance, like he knows there is just a guy behind, and then he also told me like he in the decisive time, in the end, he cannot even watch the tracker properly because like he has a bike to ride and it's bumpy, descending, and so on. So at this time,
Yep.
he has a few opportunities even to look at it, but then the mind games start. But it seems like from what you're telling, you could make yourself pretty free yourself from those.
Yeah, I definitely do look back a lot, probably more than I should. I mean, it's like you look back and you see no one, and then 5 minutes later you look back as if something could have magically changed. Some guy could have appeared out of nowhere, which is, yeah, it was the oddest thing where I would look behind me, and then 5 minutes later I'd look behind me again. And it's like nothing would have changed in the last 5 minutes. It's not like somebody's going to be going 4 times the speed I'm going. It's like,
Likely,
but yeah, that's definitely a challenge. But I think not looking at the tracker for me is a much better approach for sure.
unless somebody is using motor doping.
Yeah, I mean, there was some. Well, we can get into the whole tramadol situation for sure.
Yeah, the dark side of ultra. But before we get there, just let's bring you home safely
Yep.
out of the desert to the line. What time was, so it must have been at night, right? If you say it took you 48 hours, I think.
Or 41 and a half. Yep.
Yeah, 41. So Rick told me he was arriving around 10-ish, 10 something p.m.
Yep.
So it was maybe 1, 2 a.m.
Yep. It was 1:30 a.m. was when I arrived. So yeah.
You're arriving, I assume David, the organizer, is there. Who else is?
Yeah. So David was there, and I forget the woman's name. There was a couple of people there. But it was Rafa was there. I'm trying to remember if David was there. Rafa was definitely there. But yeah, it was when I first rolled in, I was like, oh great, I'm done. And then I went to the park and I saw no one. It was just dead. And I'm like, oh, no one's here. But the thing is the branding of Badlands is all black. So they're all wearing black shirts. The tent's black. So at night, it's not super visible. So
Yeah.
I came around this corner and finally I saw them, like, oh my God, yeah, there's somebody here. And we just talked for a few minutes and got a photo and gave back my tracker. And then I rode the 1 kilometer back to my Airbnb, which was like pretty hard to describe, but very difficult to do. And there was a pizza vending machine in Granada that I had seen earlier in the week. And I kind of jokingly said to my friend, oh, maybe I'll have to go there after the race. I might finish at night. Well, sure enough, I did finish at night. Everything's closed. So I went to the pizza vending machine and I got a pizza. It was actually not that bad. Like, it wasn't like a good pizza, but it was like, I don't know if you have Domino's in Germany, but like Domino's pizza, it's like, it's okay. It's not great, but
Yeah,
it does the job. Yeah, so I got that and then went back, took a shower, and I couldn't
Only
really
one.
sleep. I was just, yeah.
only
Only one to start. I had a lot more food back at the place. I just kind of like,
All
I was
right.
like, I don't know if I can deal with 2 pizzas, but no, I was pretty hungry when I finished. So
Especially if they are like domino style from a fat content perspective as well, then
yeah,
after riding for 41 hours, maybe that would be a lot. And
yeah.
your nutrition game, was it also just carbs for like these 41 hours?
No, I carry the first 10-ish hours of food, which was carbs fuel gels, which are 50 grams each, 50 grams of carbs each. And then I carried bars, so kind of a variety of bars that you can get at different stores in Spain. And then also I carried some pro bars, which are like these bars you get in America that are like 400 calories, just like
Okay.
fat, protein, everything, just really dense. So they're meant to be like for meals if you can't have a solid meal. So those are great. And then after that, it was Haribo was. So the way I kind of think of it is all my fueling is through candy. Well, to start off, gels or bars, and then after that, candy and bars / Oreos, etc. I don't do any fueling through liquid. I just like to separate my fueling and hydration. So after that, my fueling was, yeah, a lot of Haribo. I kind of think of Haribo as like the gels where they're like just straight carbs, get into your system quickly. And then I think of like the Oreos and the donuts and stuff like that. It's more like my bars where it's something solid, it's something to fill your stomach up. And one thing to think about is in a race this long, you're burning so many calories that high fat stuff is almost more effective. Not from efficiency standpoint, but in eliminating the deficit that it's constantly growing, because there's 9 calories per gram of fat. There's only 4 calories per gram of carbs. So
Yeah.
it's just effective sometimes getting higher fat stuff in. It just keeps you fuller for longer. And in terms of intensity, it's not like you're going that hard. I mean, it feels like you're going hard, but you're really still going pretty easy in the grand scheme of things. And my gut
But
is quite
quickly
robust.
burning
So
through your glycogen stores. But then it's so interesting because like I talked to Rick and Svenja about this too, and they were both in the camp of going only carbs. And I mean, there is definitely at some point there is a cutoff point
yep.
where like you couldn't do tour divide on gels and drink
Yeah.
mix. That wouldn't work because at some point you need like
Yep.
the other macronutrients, even the micro ones, even vitamins and stuff.
Yeah.
But like apparently it works quite well still for the Badlands distance, which for a person like me who never rode like 40 hours nonstop on a bike or 38 or whatever, it's or in Svenja's case even closer to 50, I believe, if I recall
Yep.
correctly,
Yep.
which which is like a long time to live from gels. Because like for me after 5-6 hours the struggle begins. But so
Yeah.
both strategies can work quite well, apparently, yours and theirs.
Yeah. You have to kind of figure out what works for you. And I'd say most of my friends, even in short races, are using drink mix. I just don't use drink mix. And so it's like, you just kind of have to find out what works for you. And for me, it's a mix of solid and liquid fuel. And yeah, and same thing like, if you are buying stuff at a gas station or a convenience store, grocery store, a supermarket in Spain, you have to figure out, okay, what type of food just sits well with me and is good fuel. So for me, like I'm got a pretty robust gut, but you honestly, part of the challenge is finding stuff that is appealing that you're going to want to eat because you've been eating so much sweet stuff. So I often will buy sour Haribos because they taste a little bit less sweet. And then I'll buy like donuts, or I love Oreos. Oreos are always really good. In the U.S., they don't really have them as much in Spain, but the little like peanut butter crackers, those are great. And so
Mhm.
anything like that, that's good. Sometimes protein bars, honestly, just because something a little different. So yeah, you just kind of have to mix it up and yeah, buy what looks good.
What was your when you arrive and you had your pizza from the vending machine? What are you feeling and thinking at this point? Probably nothing, and you're just crushed and you need sleep, or were you quite satisfied with the effort?
I would say I was pretty ecstatic. I was so excited. I'm like, I can't believe I just did this. I can't believe I just finished it. And then I was like, I finished third as well. Like it was,
Mhm.
yeah, an incredible feeling. Obviously, finishing at that time of night is probably the worst time to finish because it's too early to wake up and just stay up the rest of the day. It's also a little bit too late to go to bed. Like your body's so wired that I couldn't really sleep. I tried to sleep and maybe I got an hour of sleep. That was it. And then I woke up at like 4 a.m. and just got up and was like, screw it. But yeah, I mean, I was so excited. And obviously back in the US, in Colorado, where I live, it was still like a normal time of night. So I got a call from a friend. He was like, he kind of figured I'd be awake still. So
Yeah.
he called me and we just chatted for a bit. And yeah, it was just a bit of a surreal feeling. And that was when I opened up the tracker. And I think I was absolutely blown away by how spread out the field was. Like, I was like, holy crap, there's still people at like 100 and something kilometers in. Like, this is unbelievable. And I think 14 hours after I had finished, only 6% of the field had finished, which was like pretty amazing to think about. So, yeah, it's definitely, it was cool to open up the tracker, see how my friend was doing, and yeah, see where everyone was on the course. But it was an absolutely amazing feeling for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the type of event that like a few people race, but there is still a fair number of people who just do it as like a personal challenge. And to me, it's definitely
Exactly.
on my bucket list and one of the events that really uh, back in the days made me like start training and so on because I really want to do it one day. But I will sleep, that's for sure.
That's a good call. I don't think the sleep deprivation is particularly good for your body. I think Lachlan Morton would tell you that he's pretty done with that sort of effort. 2 nights is one thing, but once you start getting beyond even 2 nights, I mean, I didn't sleep well for probably another 5 days after that because my
Oh
body was
wow.
so thrown off. And I've never had that experience before in Unbound or in Traca where you miss like a night of sleep,
Yeah.
but to miss 2 nights was a lot in the body for sure.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm also of the opinion, but who am I to say this? But like anything longer than Badlands, they should have like enforced stop times that make people
Yeah.
sleep. I believe this, and yeah, but if I would do Badlands, it would definitely not be 40 or 50 hours, but significantly longer. I have no clue, never did like actually the math, but
Yeah.
more days, and that would mean sleeping. Yeah, you have to sleep. And also, it's
Yeah,
just more
totally.
enjoyable then, because like if you're not fighting for the win or like top result anyways, then you can just make it still challenging, but just a bit more bearable.
Exactly. Yeah. The enjoyment part it's important for sure.
So some people apparently just trying to construct a segue here on the fly, but some people don't apparently are not there for the enjoyment, but really for the competition. And you have a Substack that I also recommend everybody to subscribe to. On there, you wrote a piece. I already hinted at it, the dark side of ultra. Probably let the people know what it was about.
Yeah, so after the race, and I think to step back, like in the US, gravel racing is huge. So you're talking about Lifetime Grand Prix. You're talking about a lot of big gravel races that are tend to be a bit shorter, attract kind of ex roadies, some mountain bikers, and there's not really much anti-doping there. So there's there's always been the suspicion that there's a lot going on. Like you hear of it in masters racing over in Europe and the US on the road, where there's like 50-year-old guys getting caught for doping to try and win a local race. And the gravel scene in the US, there's a lot on the line. Not always prize purse, but sponsorships and stuff. So like the top gravel guys are making really good livings. So, I think I was naively like, oh man, ultra racing is generally better. Like people are generally better about, doing things the right way. But Victor Bossoni, who is very talented ultra racer from France, he won Track 560 this year. He won the Transcontinental race. He's incredibly talented guy and just a great person. He posted after the race, after Badlands, he did it as a pair with his friends, so they were just kind of enjoying it. He found first off a pack of tramadol pills. So tramadol, for those who don't know, it's an opioid painkiller, which for people in the US, I mean, I think this is in Europe too, but opioids are a massive problem right now. Just mainstream. Not talking about cycling. I'm talking about the opioid crisis in terms of addiction in the US. It's a kills many people per year. Like it's a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have this type of crisis, but especially within cycling, we know tramadol because it's not
Yeah,
long ago that it has been like used in competition, and it was
exactly.
banned by WADA back at the time, because there was a case not so long ago, like 2-3 years ago maybe, in
Yep.
World Tour racing.
Nairo Quintana. There's been a few, but some big names. So yeah, it was banned initially by the UCI, and then it was banned by WADA. It also, I think part of the reason they banned it was because it supposedly affects your handling, but it's also just dangerous for the body if you don't need it. So yeah, that was found, and
Probably
then the
going
other thing that
downhill
yeah
100 km/h on opioids is a bad idea.
yeah, as it turns out, that's a really bad idea, especially when you're as tired as you are in Badlands. Because let's be honest, it's already bad enough going downhill after no sleep for a day or 2 days. Like that's also quite dangerous. So anything to make that worse is not good.
And just for
So
context, maybe for the
yeah,
listeners, like I also saw this post from Victor when he published it, and like it was pretty. You could be pretty confident that it actually was from some people riding Badlands, because he found it
yeah,
in this around this fountain or pond where there were like a bunch of gels. So one of the spots where everybody
yeah.
did, and he was, because like as you mentioned already, he was doing it with a friend in the pairs category. He was not really doing it like in the fastest of speeds. He would probably do it if he would race it solo. So a fair amount of racers had been there before him.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of brings up the second issue, which honestly, and this might be kind of controversial, I think it's almost the worst issue because there was a lot of littering. And the littering is, there's a trash can right there. It's an ultra race, so it's not like seconds matter. And it also, the littering affects the local people. So the tramadol affects the racers because it's unfair, it's cheating. But the local community doesn't care about that. What do they care? The littering affects them because that's their home. You're leaving trash in their home, and so it's like if I were to go do an ultra race through my hometown and just dump my trash next to someone's house. Like,
Yeah.
imagine that. Like, that's horrible. And so for me, I think I wrote a piece back in March about Mid-South, how when we had all the fires there that canceled the race, and up until the night before, they were planning on still running the race. And this is when people were losing their homes. This is when the fires were threatening the whole city. And their plan was still to run the race. And I thought this was the most tone deaf thing ever. Why would you run this sporting event that's really just for fun? That's the only reason people do it, while people are losing their homes and livelihoods. And I wrote this piece about how there's this issue in gravel racing, and not just gravel racing. There's other sporting events too, where people descend on a community and turn it into their playground for a weekend, like a gravel race. It's like this big race course. You get to have fun with your friends, and then you just leave all your trash and crap behind. So that is super frustrating. And this was the case in Badlands, which I thought people would be better about it because, if you can carry the food in, there's less to carry out, right? Because you're eating the food. So it's just the wrapper.
True.
It's not as hard to carry it all out. And there's plenty of places to dump your trash. Like in Spain, there's trash cans on every pole, in fact, practically every street pole in the town. It's very easy to dump out your trash. And so that was frustrating. And I think it's just like a lack of respect. And honestly, I'd say Americans tend to be really bad at, there's a lot going on in our country that's not great, obviously. Not to get into politics too much, but the one thing that I'd say in gravel racing that I noticed less of is purposeful littering in the US. People are good about packing out their trash. Of course, stuff falls out of people's pockets. That happens. But you don't see people going and just dumping trash on someone's lawn, in the US in gravel racing. You see it amongst the normal population, absolutely. There's a lot of that. But when it comes to the racing side, I think it was a little bit shocking for me seeing those photos and being yes, it's a race. People want to do well, but it doesn't take any extra time to dump your trash out. And, it's
just so
you can carry it in, you can carry it out.
mean, especially in this discipline, I feel like in a road race, I would almost not mind it as much because you're in a city. There is it's not pollution if it's on the road and then a cleaning vehicle will put it away. I'm also against this because I agree with the community take.
Yeah.
Probably it's different, but once you enter nature and you are in these remote areas, then it's proper pollution, and even if it is quote unquote just the property of someone, you just don't do it. You don't put your trash out there, and it just kills the reputation of these people. And the result, what can come of this, is what we've seen at SBT, where all of a sudden a community there, not because of littering, that was at least not the key intention, but just a community can host these events, but it can also turn on these events, and that is the worst case result. And I think it's just stupid and thoughtless, and I don't know why you would not simply say, okay, I take my gels and put them in the next bin. I mean, yeah, they are annoying and they are sticky and whatnot, but yeah, that's you have to deal with it. There is worse stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the littering it's challenging to prevent that but I think with the tramadol side, I mean, I think the only solution I can think of with that is, and I guess this is the same with littering, it's just education, because if people understand what that does to your body, if people understand that this has negative health consequences, it's going to negatively affect your body, maybe they're going to be less likely to do it. And if people understand and can see from the perspective of the locals why littering on their in their homes is bad, maybe they'll be less likely to do it. But it's hard. I mean, it's sad because I think the ultra community is generally really nice, really welcoming compared to traditional gravel, compared to road, even compared to mountain bike. But I think, I mean, those problems don't, they still touch ultra, and it's still an issue in ultra. And I think it's hard to prevent, but I mean, there have been a lot of ideas floated about how you could fix it, but I mean, who knows if there's really a solution that is permanent. So
yeah. Plus, if events like Badlands are not even officially races, then of course there will not be any kind of testing against banned or for banned substances. So yeah,
it's also expensive, and I hate to say it, like, Lifetime should have plenty of. Lifetime is very wealthy. They should have plenty of money to pay for these tests, but for a small race promoter, like, it's cost prohibitive. It's a lot of money to do these tests. It's like in the US, if you go and get just a blood test from your doctor and you had to pay for that out of pocket, they're a fortune. I mean, I realize the US healthcare system is absolutely horrible. Health insurance is really bad, but I mean, you're talking about hundreds of dollars for simple tests. And so if race promoters are going to do that, it's a challenge to be able to do that if you don't have the funds that say Lifetime does. And even Lifetime, like, they say they test. I have yet to hear anyone being tested at a Lifetime event, and which is pretty sad. Obviously, if you're doing a UCI event, that's different because the UCI has a little bit more in terms of funding for these tests, but it's still, it's kind of the Wild West, as we would say in the US. And I mean, I hope that it's not something that grows and gets worse. Also, just for the rider's own health. I mean, it's maybe they're like, oh, it's not going to affect me, but 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, you're doing stuff that's not allowed. There's a reason it's not allowed. And it's not just, it's not just that it's cheating. It's like, it's also, it also could really, really impact you negatively for your own health long-term. So.
and what I don't get, and what also makes me somewhat optimistic that there is not like a doping ring to be uncovered in ultra is, I mean, the financial gains that you make by being good in ultra racing, they are limited. Let's put it like this. I mean, sure,
Yes.
there are some brands that sponsor you maybe if you have a big win in one of the important ultra or bikepacking races, but we are not. Nobody becomes significantly wealthy because of being good in ultra racing. So that is why the worst stuff. But then even just tramadol. I mean, it's not really performance enhancing. I mean, killing the pain. Maybe that's even just also stupid because like you are, maybe even you wrote it, I'm not sure, but you're no longer in tune with the perceptions of your body, and especially during like an effort, it's not like a 3-4 hour effort, it's like a very, very long effort, 40 hours plus most likely. Then it's just a bad idea. Don't do it, people. Don't take tramadol or even like other legal painkillers. Don't use them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you get hurt, it's maybe not something that's bad, like you didn't crash and break your collarbone, but you did something that's kind of like, oh, your knee's kind of hurting. You could not fully notice it until it's too late. And I mean, that stuff can come back to bite you later. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely a bad idea. And I mean, there's a really good thing, really good performance enhancing drug, and you know what it's called? It's called carbs. Just fuel your body and eat a lot of food, and that's how you go. That's how you go fast. I mean, I often joke, I'm like, these races are as much fueling competitions as they are physical competitions, because I think any ultra racer would admit they're never going to be Matthew Van Der Poel. Like, they're just never going to be that level. But like, I think one thing that's universal across ultra racers is they're really good at being able to fuel. They're mentally tough. That's one thing. And they're really good at being able to just take in a ton of food, because you have to be able to do that to do well at these races. And, that's just one of the keys to success for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about something a bit more positive, because you didn't
Yep.
go back home to the States after you were done with Badlands in Granada, but you decided to do a little bikepacking trip in the UK, which you even had a cool name. Is the name your idea, or was it something that existed before?
So
The
yeah, so James Bracey from Tailfin makes bikepacking bags, came up with it, and pretty much the story behind it was Tailfin was putting on a new event in the UK called Detours, which was a sort of a breve style race. So the idea behind it was there's point A, there's point B, and whoever can hit the most checkpoints within the time limit, which was 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Whoever could hit the most checkpoints in that time limit would win. There's 10 checkpoints total, and you could either just do one, ride to the finish, and just have a fun, easy day, or you could try and hit all of them. And so the goal was to make it accessible, welcoming, fun. And then when you got to the campsite, they had showers, they had catered food, they had a movie we could watch, they had talks. It was just it's a great time. And so I was like, I really want to do this. It's right after Badlands. And then I was mapping it out. And I'm like, it'd also be cool to go visit Exposure Lights, which are in the UK. And then I kind of was like, I could ride between them. And then I was like, well, I could ride between them directly, but I also could go like see more of the country. And so I built this long route that was kind of around the UK, around England and Wales. And I called it the Tour of Detours because it was like a detour to get to the event called Detours. It was a big extra loop, but it was incredibly fun. It ended up being 9 days, 970 miles. Not sure how much that is in kilometers. About 64 hours of riding. And this was about 6 days after Badlands, so it was a lot in the body, but it was just a really, really great experience. It was like, besides the Detours event, which technically was a race, there was no racing element of any of the rest of it, so it was pretty relaxed.
in the post that you wrote afterwards, you wrote like, you only had one speed that you could use at the end, but you feel confident to do some longer bikepacking racing now, because in the end you felt you could have went on, no problem.
Yeah.
So good, especially as you had Badlands still in the legs. But you wrote in the same piece quite nicely about the experience that you had in the UK. So probably share a bit about like the highlights of this trip and your takeaways from it.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing was just seeing the countryside and interacting with the people there. So obviously, we speak the same language, but it's a very different culture.
Had you
I grew
spent
up in
like
New England.
significant time in the UK before the tour of
Nope.
tours? No. Okay.
So I'd been to Scotland for a couple of weeks around the World Championships in 2023, but I'd never been to England or Wales. So I hadn't spent a lot of time there. I grew up in New England in the U.S., so the far northeast of the U.S., which has the most, I'd say, English uh, influence of anywhere in the U.S. So it's the oldest area of the U.S. It's where the Revolutionary War started. It's where Lexington and Concord are, the oldest houses. So it has some influence like that, but it's not the same. So for me, seeing the countryside and really experiencing the people and the food, that was the highlight. I mean, going to spend time with Exposure Lights and Tailfin, like just really great people. Like, yes, they're sponsors, which is really cool, and I'm very thankful for that. But beyond that, they're just really nice people. I mean, they put me up for the trip. They helped me out all I needed. They were just, with Tailfin, I went to their office, spent 2 hours talking with them about some new products, and just like, I mean, people were really welcoming and friendly, and just being able to experience a country by bike, I think, is one of the coolest things, because if you're walking, you can't go very far. If you're in a car, you don't see as much. You're just behind glass and you're going really fast. Biking is like that sweet spot where you can experience an area, but you can experience a lot of area because you can cover a lot of ground, but you're going slow enough that you really get to feel what it's like there. You get to experience its weather, you get to experience its culture. So I just absolutely loved all that. The Detours event in Wales was incredible. Wales is very wet, it's very rainy, but it's absolutely beautiful. And that format was great because it was just a great way to meet people. So Seb Royer was there. So he's obviously a very talented Spanish, or not Spanish, a little tired, German ultra rider.
Yeah.
Justinas Levikis was there. He won Trans Balkans this year. A few other ultra riders as well that are partners with Tailfin. So it was just a cool way to connect with them outside of racing, and just connect with a lot of new people who, some of whom were really experienced in ultra riding and bike packing, and some of whom had never done it before. So,
but you probably spent the longest time on the bike to get to the event, right? Or
I think
because Seb would
me
also
and
be
Seb were.
always good for something like this. But did you do something like this?
He did ride from Germany. It was a little shorter. He I think he had some pretty big days, but he did it over a few days. But yeah, no, he went direct from Germany, from Cologne, I think, and then I rode. I could have ridden it in a day or two to get to the event, but I did instead. I did 5 days around to get there, and then a couple days back, mix of on and off road. So yeah, it was cool. It was kind of fun that we both had that way of getting there. So
I'm glad you mentioned the food, because I happened to live in the UK myself for 1 year. And the reputation that British food has is, I would say, almost as bad as the reputation of American food in
yep,
the rest of the world.
yep,
However, like, by the way, I also think US has like a pretty vibrant food culture, actually, and a really diverse one in this huge country. But UK food, especially like the traditional pub food, I actually quite like it. And I think if it is well done, which admittedly very often it is not, but the same goes for German cuisine cooking as well.
yeah.
But if it is well done, it can be very delicious. So what was like your favorite British meal that you encountered during the trip?
I mean, I'd say not a meal, but Welsh cakes are really good as ride
Welsh
food.
cakes.
So they're like these little. It's almost like a scone, or I think British people would call it a scone, but it's like a a little like almost pancake size, a little bit thicker. It's hard to describe, but yeah, it's just really good. It's like a sweet pastry sort of thing. I recognize this is Indian food, but curry, because of Britain's colonial past, curry there is very good. I had some curry there, and it was just actually had two curries there. It was incredible, really good. And yeah, same thing. The pubs are great because they're just beyond the food. They're just, the atmosphere is great. They're very cozy in a country where it's often kind of cold and wet. They're very like homey feeling, if that makes sense. So yeah, those were really good. And then those flapjacks, which are like very dense, high calorie bars you can get. They're so good. Like, I wish those would be perfect ultra food. Like, they're just really dense, not much air in them, which is key.
Yeah, and you get
high
them freshly
calorie.
baked.
Yeah, they're
yeah. You can buy them in supermarkets as like packaged goods, but they are nothing in comparison to the fresh stuff you get there.
Yeah, it was funny. I also tried mushy peas while I was there. That's probably in the U.S. the stereotype of the worst of British cuisine, and they weren't that bad. I mean, they're just peas that are mushy. But yeah, I didn't have fish and chips. I will admit that I'm not a big fried fish person, but I mean, we have those in the U.S. too, and fried fish, you also can get that. So I was like, it's not that exciting, but it is cool to, it's the same way. Like in the U.S., I'd say British people have a reputation for being very rude, which I find funny coming from the U.S., where everyone is rude. And people in the UK were so much friendlier. Of course, I'm sure if you go to London, in a big city, yeah, people are rude, but that's any city. If you go to Berlin, if you go to New York, if you go to Chicago, if you go to LA, cities are just tend to be like, there's so much stress and so much, everyone's in a rush, that people tend to be a little less friendly.
Yeah.
But in the countryside, people are just so friendly. The store clerks were friendly. Just people were, patient. It was great. So yeah, I think it's a cool way to experience a true culture versus just going to the capital city where you get to experience a lot of tourist areas. Yeah.
There comes an anecdote to my mind. So like, one of the first times in a supermarket, we were paying, and there was this young guy at the cashier, and my back then girlfriend, she was like putting the stuff on the thing, and then he was like, "Hey love, how are you, love?" and I was so like afterwards I was, wow, what a fucking bastard. How can he do it with you? Then she was like, what are you? And my girlfriend back then was actually British, so
Yeah.
she what, he was just very friendly. And then yeah, later I realized that every grandma in every store is like, hey love, how are you?
Yep.
And yeah, people are they're friendly on a different level.
Yeah,
But you
exactly.
can
And
confuse it.
it's
So maybe that is what your countrymen, they just confuse the friendliness with.
yeah, and I mean it's funny coming from the US because I'd say people here on average much less friendly. It depends on the part of the country you're in for sure. And if you're in a big city, of course they're going to be not friendly. Like people are in a rush, people are, impatient. But yeah, if you get to see like the real side of a country, I think it's very different. So
It's funny you say this because, like, from a German perspective, we always think like, oh yeah, Americans, they are so nice and friendly. You can have like small talk because, yeah,
yeah,
I
it,
assume
it,
Germans must be the worst, even though
well,
probably aren't.
it's funny because I mean every country has a reputation. So like I think Germans and Dutch people tend to be like Americans have a reputation. They're very serious, which I like. They're just they're straight talkers. Like they're going to tell you as it is, which I like. And some Americans really don't like it. I think a lot of Americans kind of will talk around the bush and kind of pretend like, oh, everything's fine, but it's not really. Um, but it also just, the US is so big that it's every part of the country is different. I mean, there's just completely different cultures from the South the north. If you go to California, it's a totally different culture than say Vermont. And that's I'm sure it's similar in a lot of countries, but yeah, it's especially noticeable in the U.S. for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. So, are you planning to jump into some longer bike packing racing style things next year?
Yeah, so I'd like to do Atlas Mountain Race in Morocco. So that's a goal. I'm actually hoping to do it with Noel van Loon, who's if you know Fat Pigeon on Instagram, he's a Dutch content creator and racer, and I'm hoping to do it with him. I got to know him at the Chaka, and then we got to know each other even better at Unbound because he stayed with me. So yeah, that's a goal for next year. It's in February, and then hopefully go back to do some similar races to Badlands and Unbound. So I want to go to Chaka again. That was just an incredible experience. And I'd also hopefully be living over in Spain next year. I think I need to make the jump because most of the races I want to do are in Europe, and I just think it will be much easier logistically to get to these races. Yeah, and I would love to explore elsewhere in Europe. So I want to do another one of these bike packing trips next fall, and I need to figure out a place to do it. Croatia would be really cool. So somewhere in the Balkans would be very cool. Germany would also be very cool. So there's so much to explore, and I think if I did Germany, I probably would do like Belgium, Netherlands, maybe try and eventually cut into Denmark and then cut over to Germany. Obviously Germany's huge, so you wouldn't be able to hit all of it, but at least you'd be able to experience some of it. And so, yeah, there's a lot to explore for sure.
I would recommend it because, like, I I always wonder why in the cycling community it is not a very popular place. Germany
Yeah.
isn't, because like it's pretty diverse in terms of
Yep.
landscape, and you can have like already proper climbing, like not like the high Alps at proper altitude, or not really a lot of this, but still there is good climbing in the south, but then very diverse terrain through the
Totally.
country,
Yeah.
and pretty bike friendly compared to other, not on the level of like the Netherlands, like they are perfect, but there are definitely worse countries in terms of bike friendly infrastructure. And especially I'm always so surprised. I can be riding somewhere in the woods, and then there is like a sign from the bike path, because in the middle of the wood it's still assigned a bike lane and you can see a direction. So I do
Yeah.
nowadays a fair bit of riding without like a head unit or
Yep.
navigation, because I can just follow the signs and then discover some stuff, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's something we don't have in the U.S. I mean, the biking infrastructure in the U.S. is notoriously very bad, and so, yeah, I think, yeah, there's a lot to explore. I mean, even in the U.S., there's a lot to explore. Like, in the Rocky Mountains where I live in Colorado, there's just some incredible riding there. Just especially mountain biking it's really remarkable. I've seen the Alps, the Pyrenees in Europe. And it's a lot to explore and not enough time, but I think that's on the cards for next year, hopefully. So,
well, that's a big step. So, do you want to jump to Girona or something less mainstream?
yeah, so I would love to jump to something less mainstream, but I think Girona is just so easy to live in as an expat. There's so much infrastructure for pro cyclists there, and there's so many people I know there. I think it's a little easier to make a home base there. I think
So what people
I would.
Paul, he spent like his altitude training camp pre Unbound, I believe. Trucker, I don't fully recall, but in
Yep.
Andorra, and he was
Yep.
pretty hyped. He's like also of the German no bullshit variety, and like he loved it because it's to the point. A lot of pro riders, not as hyped. It's not just
Exactly.
do your job and ride a lot, train a lot. So he liked this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Girona is pretty overhyped. I think it's almost a little claustrophobic because you're living next to all your coworkers. It's as if you work at a company and all of your coworkers live within a 1 kilometer radius of you, which is very odd. But at the same time, Andorra is great, but it's pretty far away from an airport, so that's a challenge. It's the winters aren't the greatest. The variety of terrain is not very good, so it's up or downhill pretty much. So that's a challenge. In terms of tax status, that's not as much of a concern for me. Let's say I think it's more the convenience factor. I would love to live in southern France because I speak some French. I learned that in school, but it's just so much more expensive there. So I say Girona is like a sweet spot where the weather's pretty good all year round. It's relatively affordable compared to the U.S. and southern France. The riding is good. There's good mountain bike, good gravel, good road. There's good training partners. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, it would be cool. Like, if the UK was easier without, didn't have Brexit, it was easier to get to and from. I mean, I absolutely love my time there. The weather is obviously not great, but I'm really used to that with training. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's a beautiful area. But yeah, I'd say honestly, I think realistically, at least for the first year, probably have to be Girona just because it's just easier. So yeah, if anyone's looking for a roommate in Girona, let me know. But that's gotta start planning that now. So yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to talk to like the local marketing here in Heidelberg where I live and say, look, we should try to push for this city here as like the German Girona essentially, because it's I really like the spot here, but then you're surrounded by Germans. And I think what is good if you make the jump from the US to Europe, then to go to a place where you are guaranteed to have like a community that you can plug in right away. That's the cool thing about Girona. So there are so many expats also that can support you in the transition. So probably that's a good first step.
Totally, yeah. And I think all the other challenge is just weather, and Girona just has pretty good weather. I think that's the other thing. Like southern Spain is great in the winter, but it's too hot in the summer. Northern Spain is just kind of the sweet spot. Same with southern France, and I think like Germany would be really cool, but it's the challenge with the weather. And I think if I'm gonna move, I live in a place with pretty crap weather at the moment in the winter. And so I'd say if I'm going to move, I want to move to somewhere that has pretty decent weather in the winter, just to make training more easier. But also, if I'm going to go to a race in February and it's hot there, I'm a little more prepared for that versus right now where I have zero heat acclimation in February because I'm just training out in the cold all the time, below zero. So yeah.
Cool. So thanks a lot for taking the time for coming on to talk all things ultra racing and adventuring. Anything that you wanted to get off your chest that we didn't touch on yet?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think, feel free to give me a follow on Instagram and Substack. I'll make sure I can send Thomas the links to those. But, I really enjoy writing. It's kind of my outlet.
In the show notes. So. I have them.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. But I really enjoy writing. That's kind of my outlet. And I'd say there's fewer and fewer of us in the cycling space. I know you're one of them who do writes, but especially amongst racers, there's not too many of us just because it's a little bit more of a barrier to entry. It's a little bit harder. But for me, I find it much nicer than video content. I still do some video, but yeah, writing is it's just a great way to communicate and share my experiences. So
Yeah, it differentiates you.
yeah, exactly.
Less
Yeah.
Instagram, more writing. I'm all for it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun chatting.
Have a good one.
Okay. Talk to you later.